welcome to Diecast Restos. I'm Jason and this is a Hot Wheels Shelby Cobra Daytona. It was kindly sent to me by Michael. He provided me with a huge number of his childhood diecasts that were in varying states like this one, which he had repainted and later tried to remove the silver paint from. It's ripe for a rebuild, so I will be customizing it to better represent the iconic race car. Here's how Michael's model once looked. And this is the car I will be replicating, the number 5 1964 24 Hours of Le Mans class winning Daytona. To achieve that, I'll be using a combination of this simple decal set from Le Mans Decals and this brilliant wheel set from Creative 164, complete with separate centre knockoffs. The Daytona was born from Carroll Shelby's desire to beat Ferrari at Le Mans in his own machinery. Shelby had won the race alongside Roy Salvadori in 1959, driving the Aston Martin DBR1. Heading towards the mid-60s, Shelby had developed the Cobra into a successful GT race car. But he quickly realised that its open-top design was limiting its top speed along long straights, e.g. the 3.7 mile long Mulsanne straight at Le Mans. Even with a hardtop fitted, aerodynamic drag reduced its top speed to around 157 miles per hour, almost 30 miles per hour less than rival Ferrari's 250 GTO. This difference represented a loss of 10 seconds per lap to the Ferrari in the 1963 event. Shelby asked Pete Brock to design a sleek, competitive new coupe body, which would be fabricated by John Olsen. Brock, Olsen and driver Ken Miles were the 3 original members of Shelby's project. The rest of the Shelby American team initially snubbed the project, though the tide would later turn as development went on with more and more encouraging results. Bob Negstad designed the car's suspension. He also designed the chassis and suspension for the Ford GT40, which would also make its Le Mans debut in 1964. Brock originally began sketching out the design of the new car on the floor of the Shelby American workshop. He based his designs on German engineering plans for an aerodynamic racing car dating back to the 1930s, discovered in the archives at Ford. Brock then took a crash-damaged GT Roadster chassis and removed the bodywork, placing the seat and steering wheel in the position he thought the components should be. Miles then sat in the car and, using wood offcuts and gaffer tape, Brock designed the windscreen around him. This was the first component to be manufactured for the car. The remaining bodywork was hand-formed from aluminium. This car, designated CSX 2287, would be the first and only Daytona to be built in California. Shelby had also had conversations with Convair aerodynamicist Ben Howard, who said that the design needed to have a 3-foot long tail extension, but Brock stood by his design. Shelby would later admit that this would have been the correct course of action, though this extension would have been too much work. Ken Miles tested the car at Riverside Raceway and clocked 186 miles per hour along the mile-long straight. Miles wasn't impressed though, saying that the car had almost flown, lightening the steering a great deal when travelling over 160. It took another 30 days of development before Miles signed the car off. The Ford 289 cubic inch V8 powered car was now hitting over 190. 2287 was shipped over to the Daytona Speedway for its debut race, the Daytona 2000 km event on the 16th of February 1964. Driven by Dave MacDonald and Bob Holbert, the car claimed pole position and ran an average speed of 106 miles per hour. A fire would put an end to their race after 202 laps. MacDonald and Holbert then drove the car at the 12 Hours of Sebring, where they won the GT class, finishing 4th overall. This chassis was entered as car number 6 for the 1964 24 Hours of Le Mans, driven by Chris Amon and Jochen Neerpasch. This was painted Viking blue and had distinctive white painted front fenders. Chassis CSX 2299 was the second coupe built, and the first completed at Carrozzeria Grand Sport in Modena, Italy. This was entered into the 24 Hours of Le Mans as car number 5 in 1964, piloted by American pair Dan Gurney and Bob Bondurant, and happens to be the car I'm recreating today. Again painted Viking blue, this car had the distinctive and now iconic twin white stripes. Another chassis, CSX 2286, was also crafted in Modena for Le Mans. It never made it to the race, despite being entered for Ken Miles and Bob Holbert as car number 4. The intention for this car was to lengthen the chassis and install the 427 cubic inch Ford NASCAR inspired engine, but this was later downgraded to a 390 cubic inch V8. This was installed, but a host of other parts failed to arrive, meaning the car missed the race. Another entry to Le Mans was the private number 7 car of Ed Hughes, which again failed to arrive. In practice, Dan Gurney achieved a qualifying position of 10th in the number 5 car, good enough to top the GT class. After the first hour of the race, Ford led the prototype class from 4 Ferraris, while Gurney followed up, leading the GT class for Shelby. Before midnight, the number 6 car led the class, but alternator problems meant the Gurney-Bondurant car passed them for 4th position, 5 laps behind the lead prototype Ferraris. The 6 car would later be disqualified after a Ferrari mechanic saw the team using outside assistance of a battery recharging unit in the pits, resulting in a skirmish between the two team leaders. By the 16th hour at 8 AM, Ferrari occupied the top 4 positions, including taking the lead of the GT class through the privateer Taverneau 250 GTO. The Shelby and EMB GTO were both a lap further back on 221 laps. Ferrari would go on to collect a podium clean sweep in their 275 and 330 prototype cars, but their dominance of the GT class from previous years would be broken by none other than Dan Gurney and Bob Bondurant. Despite suffering from high engine temperatures throughout the second day, the pair would bring the Daytona home in 4th place overall and 1st in class, 1 lap ahead of the ENB team's Ferrari 250 GTO. During the race, the car clocked 196 miles per hour along the Mulsanne Straight. Later that year, chassis 2299 would set lap records at Ramsden Rouen, and it also set the race distance record at Le Mans and Goodwood. The latter it would also claim class victory at in the 1964 World Sportscar Championship event. By the year end, Shelby finished 2nd in the championship to Ferrari in Division 3 for cars over 2000cc. Further Daytona chassis were built for competition in 1965. Chassis CSX 2300 was leased by Ford of France from Alan Mann Racing and entered into the 1965 Nürburgring 1000 km race. Painted white with blue and red stripes, this tricolore entry was driven to 3rd in class and 12th overall. The car would be returned to Alan Mann Racing after the race and repainted Guardsman blue metallic with a white stripe of the 1965 Shelby American team. Carroll Shelby would later own this chassis himself, before it was sold in 2000 for $4.4 million. Chassis CSX 2601 was the 4th Daytona to be built and competed in 8 FIA races in 1965. It won the GT class at 4 events: Monza, Nürburgring, Rance and Enna, as Shelby went on to win the 2000cc plus Division 3 International Championship for GT manufacturers, thus becoming the first American constructor to win a title in FIA international competition. After featuring in the movie Redline 7000, it was purchased by its driver in 1965, Bob Bondurant, who sold it in 1969. 2601 was again sold in 2009 for $7.25 million. The final chassis was CSX 2602. This competed in 6 races in 1965. It raced in the Swiss red and white colours of Scuderia Filippinetti in that year's 24 Hours of Le Mans, wearing number 59. After Ford had used up their entries for that year's events, they approached Filippinetti, who typically ran Ferraris, asking them to purchase the car from Alan Mann Racing and run it as their own entry. 2602 ran until the 10th hour, when it suffered a blown engine. It was returned to Alan Mann Racing, repainted in the Shelby American colours, and never raced again. Chassis 2299 also competed in 1965, winning both Daytona and Sebring events and setting the lap record at Alton Park in the process. The car had a new livery for 1965, repainted Guardsman blue with 2 larger longitudinal white stripes and a transverse white stripe across the nose. This car was the last to be sold by Shelby. It had a bill of sale which read the #1 Cobra Daytona Coupe. This car is currently displayed at the Shelby American collection in Boulder, Colorado. The original car, chassis CSX 2287, would end its racing career by setting 25 world records at the Bonneville Salt Flats in November 1965, during a Goodyear tyre testing session. Shortly afterwards, it was reconditioned and listed for sale. It was bought by slot car magnate Jim Russell from Shelby in 1966, after seeing it listed in a newspaper for $4,000 to $5,000. Disgraced record producer Phil Spector then purchased the car from Russell, and it was modified slightly for street use, including the fitment of mufflers and interior carpeting. The cabin became uncomfortably hot at low speeds. It's speculated that Spector continued to drive it on the streets and racked up so many speeding tickets that his lawyer told him to get rid of the car before he lost his license. It would make an appearance in a 1968 episode of The Monkees, where it was raced against the Monkeemobile, but by the mid-70s, all trace of the car had been lost. However, in 2001, it was rediscovered in a rental storage unit in California. Its owner had since committed suicide, and the car was left to gather dust. It was then subject to an extensive legal battle between the mother of the former owner, who sold the car on to Frederick Simeone, and a friend of the deceased, who was the recipient of the storage unit in her will. The car now lives at the Simeone Foundation Automotive Museum in Philadelphia, preserved and mechanically reconditioned. In 2014, CSX 2287 became the first vehicle to be added to the Historic Vehicle Association's National Historic Vehicle Register in the United States. As for chassis 2286, originally designed for the big block Ford engine, it was returned to California and returned to stock, eventually making it to Le Mans a year late in 1965, where it failed to finish. This has since been raced in vintage competition, undergoing a full repair and restoration after a crash at Laguna Seca in 2012. After the original 6 cars had been built, Carroll Shelby was reassigned to the Ford GT40 project, again to compete at Le Mans and again to beat Ferrari, this time at the highest prototype level class, which would famously be achieved in 1966. This casting does a reasonable job at recreating the distinctive race car, though in the typical Hot Wheels fashion of the era it was released, the wheel arches are miles too big. The model came out in 2007, with Michael's metallic teal design one of that year's variety. The dark metallic blue, red and metallic silver models all had single white stripes and number 59 tampos to the hood and sides during that first year. All had clear transparencies except the silver model, which had a light blue tint. It remains a current casting, with its most recent release being in 2024. It's had near annual releases during the 2010s before making a comeback in 2024 after 5 years away. But now let's reassemble my take on the Daytona. I needn't worry about drilling straight through the rear rivet post on this model, as it is handily concealed beneath the spare tyre moulded into the interior piece. After that and the polished up transparency have been slotted in, all it takes is a couple of 3mm M2 laptop screws to secure the base before I give it a quick test run. Not forgetting the ammo wet effects for the taillights, of course. Here was how Michael's donated Daytona looked earlier. He told me that he had tried to undo the handiwork of his childhood by attempting to remove the silver paint. This left it in perfect condition for me to take advantage of. There's nothing I like better than sorting out a dodgy paint job. I was also desperate to lose those novelty oversized wheels, which frankly look terrible and do not do the model any justice. So let's see how I brightened Michael's Daytona. It's now in a rich metallic blue, sporting the livery of the 1964 24 Hours of Le Mans GT class winning Daytona, driven by Dan Gurney and Bob Bondurant. This is an iconic colour scheme, and twinned with those accurate Creative 164 wheels, it really looks the part. It's my tribute to a racer that, while successful in its own right, paved the way for an even bigger story that would follow in 1966, when the assistance of Shelby helped Ford overcome Ferrari with the GT40 at Le Mans. Its racing career may have been short, but the Daytona's legacy lives on, remembered for being a car that broke the mould. Tell me your thoughts on the car and my custom build down in the comments, and leave a like if you enjoyed the story. My thanks again to Michael for sending this one over to me. Don't forget to subscribe if you aren't already, but all that leaves me to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.